In today's video, I'm going to be using a vintage container that's come from a charity shop. This one has a glass floral frog in the centre to hold your flowers. So it's a design without any floral foam or wire netting. If this is something that you would like to learn, then keep watching today's tutorial. As the title suggests, today I'm going foam free and I've got another charity shop container. I've had this since before Christmas. I haven't really had a colour combination that suits it, but today you can see here on my right hand side I've got some fantastic poppies. I'm going to work with the poppies and a few other flowers and different colours. So I've chosen the poppies because of the lovely colour combination. I'm also going to introduce a colour that you might not have thought would go with the peach, but it is quite a fashionable colour combination at the moment. So this delightful glass container I think is Art Deco, but if there's any experts out there, you might tell me differently. It came with a glass floral frog. So this is this little attachment that sits on the top. It has places for you to place your flowers through. So we're going to have quite an organic and quite a natural style arrangement. I'm not 100% sure if this is the original floral frog because it is moving around slightly in the container. I have tried it in a few different positions, and I suppose if I wanted to stop that movement I could add some floral fix onto these two mounts here, but that would be introducing a single-use plastic and I'm not going to bother doing that. So this is my container for today's video and I think it's really pretty. If you've not worked with poppies before, they're a bit of a tricky flower to condition and care for. This is the Icelandic poppy that we can buy from the wholesalers. Again, you might have a variety like this grown in your garden, but this is the one we tend to buy through the florist supplies. I have poppies that grow in the garden, but not this style and not this colour. And when they come in, they've got this almost quite ugly calyx on the top, and inside are the gorgeous flowers. That very rarely opens naturally, so what you need to do is to pull back the calyx. Now I find it better to do it from the bottom. Pull back the calyx to reveal that magnificent flower underneath. I find if you peel from the top down, sometimes the petals get stuck and then it's hard to open it up and the flower petals get damaged themselves. It does look a bit brutal, but that's the best way to care for them. Look at that. The colour on that is just fantastic. And they can be a bit temperamental with the care and conditioning because they can be a latex producing flower. So you sometimes get that irritant sap coming out of the bottom. And to prevent that, you can place the stem over a naked flame. So you could light a candle or you could have a lighter available and you want to sear the edge. But this variety isn't too bad. So remember, when you're buying them, if you're a florist, buy them at this stage, and once they've had a good drink, you need to pull back the calyx. If you're buying them in a supermarket, because you can sometimes get them in a supermarket here in the UK, or if you're buying them from a florist shop, you need to peel back this calyx to reveal that magnificent poppy underneath. Isn't that just fantastic? Now these come in lots of different shades of mainly oranges, peaches, creams, white and probably a bit of a dusky pink, but I've gone with apricots, oranges and peaches. Not many of the flower heads are the same colour and the same shape, but I thought that along with my other flowers is going to link really nicely with my container. And what I'm going to start by doing is creating probably an asymmetric shape. Now I'm going to go taller on one side and shorter on the other, but I am going to repeat the shape of the container. So you will see that more often than not, when I use a boat-shaped container like this, which is typical of a vintage container, I like to follow the shape of the container. We could do it in a fan shape and maybe I'll redo that so you can see how that works as well. But I really do like the sinuous lines of the poppies and a design that's taller on one side than the other. Now I've actually not arranged in a floral frog like this while filming a YouTube video, so fingers crossed it's all going to work out quite well. Now I'm going to start with a bed of the poppy. For some reason I nearly called it a lily, and if I'm relying on the container itself to hold the flowers, we've got to go in to one of the holes, and as you can see, it doesn't give you a particularly good style or shape of floral design. So instead of going with the poppies first, I'm going to create a little bit of foliage here at the base to give my flowers a bit of structure to hold them into place. And I'm going to use some bay today. If you're in the UK, you might have bay growing in your garden. And I'm just going to feed a couple of pieces through. Now that jingle of the glass is really going to annoy me as I'm working along, but you'll have to try and ignore it. Any damage on your foliage, just remove. And what we can do is not just place it in the holes in the centre, but we can also place it down the side. I think I'm going to put that one on the reverse. Now there's not really going to be a lot of shape starting yet. This is just a good way of creating a solid structure at the base that will help hold your flowers into position. And this base, let me just separate those off, has quite a large hole in the middle here, and I am wondering if a candle would normally go in there. So if there's anybody out there that's more of an expert than me on vintage containers, you can let me know. Again, I've only paid a couple of pounds for this in a charity shop, and really what I'm aiming to do is get that foliage baseline in here. And if you haven't got foliage, you could use gypsophila, a big hydrangea. You could of course replace it with foam, but short bunchy greenery down there at the base will help to give me a little bit of a structure to hold my flowers into place. And I'm going to do this facing you as a front facing design. And before I start extending the height out, because you saw that the poppies don't really sit in a position that I want them to go, I'm going to add some flowers first of all at the base. Now my first flower is the ranunculus. They're already a bit short. Oh, that's not a ranunculus. My first flower is an Agapanthus. It is short because I've used it in the previous design, and the colour link is just magnificent. Now this would be classed as blue. This one is peach. Blue and peach are opposite on the colour wheel. And if you want more information on colour combinations, there is a Tuesday video which I can link here in the cards. You can go back and I talk about two colours that lay opposite one another on the colour wheel. So what I'm going to do with the Agapanthus, and you might consider these as being purple, but when we buy them as blue. So blue Agapanthus, it's providing me with actual weight at the bottom and visual weight, so your eye is being drawn all the way down to the bottom. And now what I'm going to do, using a rose that's a peach colour, so this is Peach Avalanche. It's a nice open blousy rose that we quite often use in wedding work. These have been in the studio probably a week, so they have opened up quite nicely. If you're buying these from your florist supplies or a supermarket or your florist shop, then they're likely to not be quite as open as this. And I'm going to use the bigger heads down towards the base. Remember to leave the stems long enough so they get to the bottom of the water. But I'm going to start by aiming this towards you. Find a little gap in that glass container, and I'm going to start by creating almost like a focal point there at the front. It's still important to bring weight to the back. So if we look at this from the side, nearly all of my flowers are there at the front. So I've still got to bring some material towards the back, otherwise the weight of the flowers will tip forward. And that's really important when you don't have any tape holding that glass container into position, because too much weight will bring it forward. So I'm starting low down. I think with this style of arrangement, it makes it easier to add your flowers on the outside and to start creating the height. But you might find that you've been taught a different way, and that's okay too. You know, different designers teaching different methods. You don't have to do exactly what I do. You can pick up hints and tips from different designers. But you'll see here, I've got the more open flowers towards the bottom. And as we start extending the colour up slightly, I'm going with a bit of a smaller rose. Peach and blue, I've probably mentioned before, is one of my favourite colour combinations. I really love these two colours together. And because I don't have that expansive foam at the bottom, I have to rely on placing my flowers in wherever the holes are in that glass container. And I'm going to get to a point where I won't be able to add any more flowers or foliage in, because those little holes that we started with are going to be completely full. You might have noticed as I was talking, the flowers were moving on this side, and that's just because the stems at the bottom are touching one another and they're pushing or moving flowers out of the way. But we're not going to worry about that because overall, the shape is lovely. It's repeating the shape of the container underneath, and I think it's working quite well. Now, the next colour is the colour that you maybe had not thought of mixing with peach, and that's lilac. It's quite a trendy colour combination at the moment. A few of these are already cut shorter because I used them in the previous design. Don't worry if that falls over, just work it in again until it sits in a position you want it to go. I'm also going to place one down quite low so that this nice lilac-y colour is down through the middle. So again, the weight of the flowers is at the bottom. I'm going to turn it round because I've been working with it facing you. On my left-hand side, we're going to add in one of those lovely lilac colour roses. I can't quite remember the colour of the lilac rose. It'll come back to me as we're talking. If not, I'll put it on the screen. But we're starting that nice boat shape. Now I'm going to start introducing some of the poppies. This nice tall one, I would ideally like up quite tall in the arrangement, but it really does depend on where those gaps are and whether there's room. It's slightly leaning outwards, whereas I would like to have had it a bit straighter, but maybe we can rectify that as we go along. But aren't they just wonderful? So, so pretty. You might have noticed that every now and again my container's a bit unstable, and that's mainly because the feet on the bottom of the container aren't perfectly straight. But I suppose manufacturing techniques back there weren't quite as refined as pottery is these days, or glassware is these days. So, a little bit of asymmetric balance going on there. I'm also going to raise one of my poppies up quite tall. Now, in traditional flower arranging, we don't tend to have very big open heads at the top of an arrangement, but it does suit this style. And I'm going to leave that there for a minute because what I've done is I've placed a lovely poppy in, but from the camera, you can't see the front of the head. So if I spin it around this way, which is the back of the arrangement, that flower is facing forward. So really putting it in that position is not going to work. What I need to do is take it out and put it on this side, and then it'll be facing you. And if this was sitting on a mantelpiece at home, we want to have it facing forward so you can really see that lovely flower, the colour and the texture. And then this more open head, which has a little curved stems nodding forward, can come more towards the front, but raised slightly up above the main flowers. So we get all those different heights and the variation, which creates a lot of interest, depth, and that three-dimensional effect. Now, I'm not too keen on that facing perfectly forward, so what I'm going to do is offset it to the side, and rather you having that big visual circle, which can be a bit heavy to look at, you're now seeing it from side on. It doesn't look quite so dominant and quite so visually heavy. I think I might have to pop and get myself another poppy. But I'm not going to rush to do it yet because I did want an asymmetrical design. Now, if you're not sure about creating designs which have a much looser effect and less formal structure and formal pattern like you tend to learn in floristry school or in flower arranging lessons, then take a little look at some artwork from the Dutch Flemish era, because they arranged with the more prominent flowers at the top because they wanted to show them off. And you can quite often get inspiration from lots of paintings of flowers from different periods of time. Now, without turning this arrangement around and looking at it from the front, I think there's a gap here that needs a poppy. We've got a lovely display of poppies coming down to this point here, and then we've got a bit of a jump and a gap before we get to the poppies over here. So I'm hoping there's going to be another colour poppy that matches this colour combination. So I'm lucky enough to have found another poppy in the same colour combination that I've already used, and now I can arrange this one to what is the left as I'm looking at it now. It might take a bit of time to turn and twist it into the position that I want it to go. Because I now have lots of stems inside those little holes that we started with, the flowers aren't moving around and twisting like they were in the beginning. That's the position I want it in. but I'm thinking that's a little bit too long, so we're going to cut that a bit shorter. We're not getting that sap leaking from the bottom, so I don't have to worry about searing the ends. But if you're using varieties of poppies, then remember you can just keep a candle or a lighter alongside your workbench and you can sear the ends. This one I think has spun around, but that's okay because we don't have foam. We can quite happily move that into a different position. That works far better in that position there. Now, of course, the beauty of not working with foam is that you can take your flowers out and rearrange them if you don't like the position that they're in. They're easy to remove once they've passed their best, and you can replace them with another flower. And when I've got to this sort of stage I am now, I'm going to add a little bit more height in with some bigger, more heavier flowers, because I know that the stems at the bottom are really going to hold these nicely into position. I just want to extend that lilac-y colour a little bit up towards the top. What's at the bottom works well being repeated at the top of the arrangement, so the colour is always linked from the bottom to the top. I don't want them matching on both sides because that is going to make the design a bit too formal, too symmetrical and too patterned. I want that really nice whimsical look to it that looks more relaxed and a bit more vintage. One of the flowers I was intending on using in this arrangement was this lovely spray carnation because I thought the colour link was superb. But I'm thinking that I'm not going to have enough room in those little holders within the glass section to add any more flowers. But we'll have a go. Now I can get one in that position there, but that looks really silly. That just looks like it's sticking up in the air. So I've decided that I'm not going to put them in. But what I am going to do, just to exaggerate those nice curves a little bit more, I'm going to use the dogwood or the cornice. And what I've done with the cornice is I've bent it. It's been sitting like that for an hour or so. I've tied it with a piece of string. And then the beauty of that is when I release it from the string, I've got those lovely natural curves that are really going to complement the style and shape of the container. And you can do this with quite a lot of flexible greeneries. Rosemary, conifer, lots of greenery would benefit from just being curved overnight and you get that lovely shape. So we've raised the height slightly with those lovely coloured twigs. Now this one I think is Winter Breeze. And what I'm going to do on this side is I'm going to place two so that they're going upright. Let's hopefully get that into position there. And don't forget, to get that balance, you have to put the flowers in the front of that glass container and the back. Otherwise, it's all going to tip forward. So I'm going to go tall up this side. So that's the natural way that the poppies are falling. It's the way they're naturally going in the glass container. So I'm going to exaggerate those curves by following the line. So we've almost got a sort of wavy line rather than that more semicircle design that you've seen me do quite often. So what I've done here is I've let the shape of the flowers speak for themselves. I haven't tried to create a formal design like those set triangles. I've just allowed the flowers to sit in that natural container and let them speak for themselves. I don't think I'm going to get anything else in there, but what I do want to do in the front is just use a few pieces of this peachy orange dogwood, just so that we have a link between the branches on the outside. Otherwise, sometimes it tends to look a bit disjointed and like I've added branches in on the outside for no particular reason. But I am now really struggling to get anything in there. Just going to rearrange them so when I turn it round, the position of the flowers is working really well. But you know, in a design like this, when you've placed enough flowers in, because you really cannot get anything else into the container. I'm not happy with this poppy hedge here, so let's just try and bring that forward. So what I've done is I've just pulled forward the lilac rose there because we had a bit of a gap there underneath this poppy, but that works much better. There's no way am I going to get any more flowers in there because all those little holes are completely filled up, and if we overfill, you'll damage the stems as you're forcing them down into the glass container, and they won't be able to drink a sufficient amount of water. So that's the front as you're looking at it there. If we look at the back, we've just got some greenery, a couple of flowers down low, which will help balance the arrangement and creates that visual depth because your eye is drawn through the arrangement towards the back. So I really love the lines of the poppies, the sinuous lines of the stems. If you don't like them, you can cover them with some foliage, because I know a lot of traditional arrangers don't like the stems to be visible, but it's such a magnificent flower. I like to see it all, stem included. So thank you very much for joining me for a no foam video. So far I've done some quite traditional designs without using floral foam, but I will look at some different methods as we go through the videos. So thank you very much for watching. Like, share and comment in the box below. Subscribe to the channel because that helps other people find us, and hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. And if you've got any questions, ask them in the comment box. I look forward to seeing you again for a new tutorial. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.